Welcome back to Odd Occasions, the show where we explore the stranger, darker chapters of human history and the people behind them. Today's episode is disturbing, not because of what happened, but because of what was said after. Some criminals try to deny what they've done. Others try to justify it. But these individuals, they spoke with a coldness that still sends chills down the spine because, in their own words, they didn't feel guilt. And so they didn't even pretend to. Viewer discretion advised. This episode contains discussions of violent crime, but we'll be keeping it respectful and non-graphic. Let's begin. Number 10. Carl Panzram. Carl Panzram didn't just admit to his crimes. He leaned into them with hatred for the world itself. One of his most haunting statements was, "I'm not sorry for what I've done. I don't have a conscience." What makes Panzram especially unsettling is how openly he described himself as someone beyond redemption. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't try to blame his past. He simply insisted he didn't care. Even at the end of his life, his final words showed the same bitterness, rage, directed at humanity itself. And that complete lack of remorse is exactly why his story still unsettles people nearly a century later. Number 9. Gary Lee Sampson. Gary Sampson's crimes shook the U.S. in the early 2000s, and what stood out wasn't just what he did, but how casually he spoke about it afterward. At one point, he made a chilling comment about changing methods because of mess and inconvenience. It like someone talking about switching tools. It wasn't grief. It wasn't guilt. It was annoyance. And in court, his behavior only reinforced that he was processing these acts like a human tragedy, was describing them like a routine decision. For the families left behind, that coldness was its own kind of cruelty. Number 8. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos remains one of the most infamous female serial killers in American history. Her life was marked by instability and trauma from a young age, but when it came to the courtroom, she often spoke with anger instead of regret. One of her most quoted lines was essentially a blunt confession paired with harsh words about her hatred toward people. Whether those words came from rage, mental instability, or something deeper, the result was the same to the public. It sounded like she had reached a point where remorse wasn't even part of the conversation, and that is what made her final years so unsettling to witness. Number 7. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy lived a double life that still feels unreal even today. 2. Publici was a friendly local figureson who even performed as a clown at events. But behind closed doors, investigators uncovered a completely different reality. One chilling moment came when he dismissed the accusations against him with a line that sounded like mockery, basically suggesting the authorities couldn't truly prove what he'd done. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was arrogance. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, his tone stayed detached, almost like he believed it was all just a legal game. Number 6. Edmund Kemper. Edmund Kemper is often described as one of the most terrifying serial killers, not only because of his crimes, but because of how calmly and intelligently he spoke about them afterward. Kemper didn't just confess. He explained in recorded interviews. He described acts of violence with a level of detachment that felt unnatural, like he was narrating something that happened to someone else. What makes his case so chilling is that he could sound polite, even thoughtful, while describing things no person should ever be capable of doing. The disconnect between his calm voice and his actions is what makes his words unforgettable. Number 5. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer became one of the most infamous criminals in modern history. And even now, people struggle to understand how someone could commit those crimes and still speak so calmly afterward. One quote that stands out is when he admitted he didn't understand why he didn't feel more regret. That line alone is disturbing because it suggests he recognized what remorse should look like, but couldn't reach it. His interviews were filled with that same eerie emptiness. Like he could describe the damage, understand it intellectually, but not emotionally. And that absence of feeling is what made people fear him even more. Number 4. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy didn't just take lives. He also tried to control the narrative. Even after his conviction, he spoke about guilt like it was simply a tool society uses to control people. In other words, he didn't see remorse as something real. He saw it as something made up. And that mindset is what made Bundy so dangerous. He could sound logical, he could sound convincing, but underneath it was something far colder, a complete lack of empathy. What chills people the most, isn't just what Bundy admitted to it, as how easily he dismissed the value of human life. Number 3. Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka's case remains one of the most controversial in Canadian crime history, partly because of the legal outcome and partly because of how her life continued afterward. After serving time, she changed her identity and attempted to rebuild her life. But one of the most unsettling parts, how calm and ordinary her public comments sounded at times, as if nothing had happened. Too many people. That felt like the ultimate insult. Not just survival but moving on, and for the families. It raised the question people still ask today. What does justice really mean when the victims don't get a second chance? Number 2. Albert Fish. Albert Fish is remembered as one of the most disturbing offenders in criminal history, particularly because his crimes involved children. What made his case even darker was how he spoke about suffering, describing pain as something he was drawn to. Doctors who evaluated him believed he had severe mental disturbances, and reports suggested self-harm behaviors as well. But even with all the explanations, the words attributed to him still leave people horrified because they reflect a person who didn't just hurt others, but seemed to describe cruelty as a desire. And that is the kind of mindset that makes these stories difficult to even listen to. Number 1. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, spread fear across California in the mid-1980s. His crimes were brutal, unpredictable, and terrorized entire communities. But what made him unforgettable wasn't only his actions, it was his attitude. In court, he appeared smug, and in interviews, he spoke about death like it was simply part of the game. That kind of language is chilling because it turns real human lives into something casual, something meaningless. And even years later, people remember the feeling he created. The idea that danger could come without warning through a window, through a door, into an ordinary night. And there you have it, 10 quotes that still haunt people because they reveal something deeply unsettling. Not just violence, but the absence of remorse. And while it's easy to focus on the shock of what these killers said, it's important to remember something else. Behind every headline were real people, real families, and lives that never got to continue. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching Odd Occasions. If you want more respectful deep dives into history's darkest stories, like, follow, and turn on notifications. And as always, stay aware, stay safe, because monsters don't always look like monsters.